I'll say it right out the gate. Visions of Mana is one of those truly underrated games that people will look back on years later and discuss how it was snubbed in the larger conversations about great games of this era and time. The magic of Mana is usually in the combat, but this time there's something special in the narrative and the underlying themes. I need to highlight some of the things that I saw. They're sitting with me and they won't leave my mental sky. And while there's a lot of greatness, there's some major flaws too. And I can't talk about the sweet without the bitter. As is normal on this channel, I'll talk about the good, the solace, and the bad, the dread. And I'll share what I did and didn't love about this game's story, regardless of the generosity of Square Enix supplying me with copies of this game. I will tell it like it is, since this game has a lot of quality parts, but the failures are in equal supply. This is gonna go into spoiler territory, so if you plan on playing the game, which I do recommend, viewer discretion is advised. By the way, I'm Solace, this is Solace and Dread. We produce analytical content primarily focused on gaming. If you like that kind of stuff, consider subscribing. Maybe it's been a little while since you played Visions of Mana, or maybe you've never played Visions of Mana and don't know the story. Well, I'm gonna break the story down in the most simplistic way possible, which means I leave out a lot of stuff. But first, we gotta set up the rules and the setting of this world. As with any Mana game, there's the mana tree, which is where the mana goddess presides, who is also very much like God, a fairy that works for the goddess, and a mana sword, which has untold magical power, and all of these are connected, right? And then of course there's the humans around the world. So that fairy goes to different parts of the world and selects alms, which are kind of like sacrificial lambs, but honorable. These alms have to go kill themselves at the mana tree, otherwise crazy shit happens, like calamity befalls your village and all that. And this cycle happens every 4 years, at which point new people are chosen to go and kill themselves, and so on and so on. Alms are also led on this journey by a soul guard, and that's just to make sure that they make it there. Now you know the rules, right? Now there's a number of supporting characters, but for our intents and purposes, we're only gonna focus on the actions of 3 or 4 of them. So here's the plot. The game kicks off with a dude named Orin. He's really upset that his girlfriend, Lysa, the Alm of the Earth and former Soul Guard, is being chosen to go kill herself at the tree. So they try to run. Immediately, she's turned to stone and the Earth Village and the surrounding area goes to shit. Well, that sucks. He fucked around and found out, and this is why you need the alms to go kill themselves, or bad stuff happens. Then we play as our protagonist, Val. And you, as Val, have this weird power to turn enemies into crystal, and you're the newly appointed Soul Guard. And your girlfriend, Hina, gets chosen as the Alm of Fire. Sounds familiar, right? So you and her travel collecting other alms, and you're preparing them for ritualistic suicide at the Mana Tree. During their travels, they meet Orin, and Orin shows pretty early on that he's a little sneaky. Remember this. Later, you run into Orin again, and he tells you, hey, he has a plan to change the rules where your girl doesn't have to die. Well, that sounds great, because she really didn't want to die anyway. So you follow him in the middle of the night, alone, to an island where, shockingly, he betrays you and uses your weird crystallizing power to kill your girlfriend right in front of you. He tells you that he needed her crystallized soul to steal the mana sword, and he fucking runs off. So naturally, you spiral into a depression because you failed to do your one job. But your remaining alms, who you didn't kill, cheer you up and you continue your journey. You collect a few more alms and become one yourself, and you head to the Mana Tree to meet the Mana Goddess, only to run into your buddy Orin yet again. This time, he's ready to take the Mana Sword and change the rules just like he said. But as soon as he plucks the sword from the stone that it's resting in, this really beefy guy pops out and snatches it. He tells you 3 things. His name is Delafos, he's gonna kill the Mana Goddess, and you're about to run them hands. You actually beat his ass pretty quickly, but apparently his plot armor is too thick. So y'all follow Delafos to the Earth Village where the game started, and you catch up to him just in time to watch him kill Orin and his petrified girlfriend. Orin fucked around and found out. Again. So y'all head back to the Mana Tree and ask the Mana Goddess for help, only to find out she's asleep. And the reason that she's asleep is because Delafos almost killed her last time he was awake with a gang of monsters. And this is the only way that she and everybody can be kept safe. It turns out that people are being forced to keep killing themselves to basically be batteries for the goddess to keep him at bay. So if you kill him, no more sacrifices, right? And y'all also find out the reason he's mad at the Mana Goddess is because he left his wife to go save the world from this gang of monsters. And the goddess let his wife die while he was out doing her bidding. So naturally, he wants revenge against God. And honestly, I can't blame him. So now you gotta go kill his gang of monsters and him and get the Mana Sword back. And you do exactly that. I mean, he breaks the Mana Sword because it wasn't useful to him, but now you have it. Then y'all throw hands one last time in front of the Mana Tree, you restore the sword, and you cut the bitch down. Now nobody has to kill themselves. Roll credits. Then it cuts to you as an old man in your deathbed, and you die. And in the afterlife, you reunite with Hina, your girlfriend, who has kind of become the new Mana Goddess. And you hug your girl, I shed a tear, the end. All right, first the Solace, or the good. There's a hidden theme in Visions of Mana, and I felt kind of stupid for not seeing it before, but it's been sitting with me. This game represents the 5 stages of grief, particularly with Val, Orin, and Delafos and what they go through. Orin, in his denial, refuses to accept what has befallen Lysa, even trying to outrun her fate. He goes into bargaining next, thinking if he can trade Hina's life for everyone else's to get the Mana Sword, maybe, just maybe, he can change the world. He'll stop at nothing to save his girl and bring her back. Delafos represents anger, as his entire motive is revenge against God for taking his wife away. His anger is so strong it corrupts the land. It's bitter and furious. And Val represents depression after losing Hina, and it was his fault. This weighs on him to the point of breaking. And finally, acceptance. He comes to terms with what happened. He takes responsibility, and he even goes so far as to tell her parents personally. And in the final act, he lets her go. He had the Mana Sword. He could have brought her back, and he chose the responsible route of changing nothing and accepting reality. That's character development. I love character development. Even the core cast you play with has the defining characteristics of the 5 stages of grief within them. Val's initial arc is one of denial for what's going to become of Hina at the end of this journey. Karina displays anger at everybody in her hometown for doubting her capabilities to be an Alm. Morley is left in a spiral of depression over what he thought he did to his hometown. Palomina is bargaining, using her alter ego to do more than she's capable of as queen of her city or as the now chosen Alm of Water. Jolet? His acceptance is his defining trait when you meet him, as he's willing to simply lay down and accept what is happening to the world, to the point of nihilism. The contrast between the bright, vibrant, beautiful colors of this world and the theme so dark is a delicious combo. I even kind of love how death as a sacrifice to the Mana Tree is viewed as an honor by most of the world. But, and this is where we start to get into the dread, or the bad, it starts to feel like nobody has any critical thinking. Everybody that questions this as a way of living is seen as a villain. Neither the Mana Goddess or Coda, who is the original Soul Guard, have any remorse for the people that have had to die to keep this battle going. Master Passar thinks that the Alms are idiots for finding honor in death and only wants to live a long life, and he's supposed to be a villain. Karina's friend in her village is treated the same way, being too scared to go out as an Alm. Orin, well, Orin's a little bit more complicated, but it's much the same. I think it's the lack of critical thinking that drives me crazy, and you're treated like a villain for doing so in this world. This isn't that bad, because it would kind of make sense in a world like this. But truly, the biggest issue I take with the story is Delafos. I get him as a character, especially connecting him to these themes. But his sudden inclusion felt off. I was connected to Orin. I was sympathetic to his cause. I knew his lover and I saw his anguish. Introducing Delafos midway through the game as a sudden big baddie steals that away, especially since he kills Orin. And we don't get to experience Delafos' anger development the same way that we got to see what happened with Orin. It's just kind of told to us in flashbacks and exposition dumps. This is probably my single biggest sticking point with this game. I know Orin being the primary villain would be a little bit cliche, but I really had a fondness for him. And Val never really got to avenge Hina. Not really, anyway. Furthermore, the side characters have compelling arcs. Mostly. But they don't get any story closure in the epilogue, and I kinda wish they did. I'd love to see how their lives unfolded, but ultimately they don't matter much to the major plot points of the game, though they do add all the depth to the world. If I had to name one more dread, it would probably be just how convoluted the story was. I had to cut out a lot to condense this down to something consumable, and I think sometimes it kind of got caught up in its own tropes too much to be able to tell a cohesive story. Linking everything together, I thought Delafos was a little bit of a fumble, but his representing anger makes his character make sense. Orin was also sold a little bit short. I would have loved having him as the final boss of the game, but either way, this story is special. The characters are special. It's such an alive and oddly fleshed out world, and you can feel the love poured into this game. The themes conveyed are touching. Death is a hard thing to comprehend and deal with, and this was just beautifully handled. It was about death. The 5 stages of grief, V for Visions of Mana, Seiken Densetsu 5. They were adamant that V was used in the English title to represent 5. It's so smart, and I'm eternally grateful that I got to experience this game at this point in my life. I needed this, and I can't thank the developing team enough for producing such a beautiful game, flaws and all. That's it from me. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. And long live the Turtle Kingdom.